have to go around pacing while standing up. We get to sit down. Lucky us. Okay, so with me are Sebastian Bourget of Sandbox.
Hi everyone.
And then also we've got Sharon Sham of Evergreen Soft Markets and Vlad Kartashov, War Riders. Excellent stuff. So let's go ahead and fire out, shall we? Okay, so for those of you that aren't otherwise familiar, we're going to go over non-fungible tokens. What on earth is the deal with them? So I just wanted to make this one a bit more of a roundtable for all three of you on this one. So I just wanted to get a better understanding of your projects and also how they utilize and leverage non-fungible tokens in them. So Sebastian, if we can start with you.
Sure. So hi, I'm Sebastian Bourget, CEO and co-founder of Pixel. We've been acquired by Nimoka brand last year as well. Our project, the Sandbox, is a decentralized, community-driven platform where creators can make voxel assets and gaming experience, then trade them and monetize them on the blockchain. We have a unique approach that combines NFT builders and gaming platform, mainly focusing on user-generated content NFTs. So the way we leverage NFTs is to allow creators, to anyone, essentially, to make their own tokens.
And Shaban, if I can find out from you.
So Shaban Chamem, the founder of Evergreen Soft, producer of Spells of Genesis, which is one of the early game on blockchain, 2015 on Bitcoin blockchain, where we put some game elements. And now we are working on a wallet made for collectibles, NFT. It's a DApp wallet where you can see and enjoy your collectibles within multiple chains.
Hey guys, I'm Vlad. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cardified. We are a venture-funded startup out of North America. We're based in Washington, D.C. We were funded in 2015, funded by two venture funds. We went through one of the top accelerators in New York. And we are the company behind War Riders. War Riders is the first MMO game of mining cryptocurrency and blowing up cars. So essentially you just ride around in the wasteland, you discover our own cryptocurrency, which is called Benzene or BZN, and then you have to bring it back to your garage unless someone kills you and takes your crypto from you. Basically, that's the game, and we're using ERC 721's non-fungible tokens for our vehicles, and we use ERC20 for our cryptocurrency BCN.
So that kind of goes on to our next question, which is really talking about why we use these certain kinds of non-fungible tokens exactly, and what kind of function they have within the games at the moment. So, Vlad, you've spoken about this one. Shaban, if we can find out your opinions on this one too.
So, the true ownership of assets are super important, and the fact that the asset lives outside the game, the asset itself has a history on-chain, which is not only on the game but verifiable for everyone, makes them valuable because they have their own story and they could be used and reused in different game and projects. So having NFT on-chain is really a game changer, and it opens doors for a lot of new use that we are only scratching the surface so far, but that we are going to explode in the future.
And I think, Sebastian, the Sandbox in particular uses a myriad of different non-fungible tokens as well.
Well, not a myriad, but 3 classes of different tokens. So ERC20 as a fungible token. For those of you who are not familiar in the audience of what is a fungible token, so they are tokens that are not unique, they don't carry their own attributes, so they can be divided and exchanged. They are mainly like currencies, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. We use ERC 721, which is, I would say, the most popular and widely known standard for non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens being tokens that carry their own properties, they are unique, they cannot be interchanged or divided. And we use as well ERC 1155, which is, I would say, a new standard being introduced last year and which is mostly supported by Engine Coin and projects like ours. It's a standard for multi-class tokens, so it's actually a fungible token, but can hold inside both fungible and non-fungible, so multiple ERC20 and ERC721. And I hope I didn't lose you at this point, being too technical, so that will be it for the technical side.
I think we're just at the early stages of the potential of what can come out of a non-fungible token, ERC20, ERC721, and there are a couple of others that have sprouted out within the community, along with a couple of other platforms too. But as we're at the stage of blockchain game development now, where we need to see more credible things, especially after the sort of downturn that we've seen from tokens, it's led to a little bit of a challenge in terms of investment. So I wanted to kind of get into a better understanding of what kind of potential can be extracted from these NFTs and how blockchain game developers in the future can really capitalize on them while maintaining an appeal towards a mass market.
I can start.
Oh yeah, I'll throw this up to all three of you.
All right. Well, Shaban kind of answered already. He mentioned that the awesome potential of NFTs, essentially through their interoperability, the fact they can be cross-chain, cross-game, and cross-platform, meaning that even if an item has been created by a developer, or in our case, anyone, it can be leveraged by other developers and game makers to be used in a totally different context, which brings two main interests. First, it increases intrinsic value by providing different use, and also give them like a long-term value. Even if the original game creator disappears, then the token stays in the ownership of the player, and other game developer can use them to keep providing an interesting experience.
I think with Spells of Genesis specifically, or Everdreamsoft, there's a certain mechanic that comes into place. You were speaking about the digital sovereignty that comes from these assets for players.
Yes, we saw a lot coming from other developers reusing some of our tokens in Spells of Genesis in their games. So their idea was to attract our gamers to their product, but at the same time it gives even more value to the tokens that we produce ourselves. So we see that with Kittyverse as well, and this kind of action opening a token to several other use that is not thought by the developer at the first time. So it really enrich the game item and the game universe, and it provides even more value for the initial issuer.
Well, Ethereum is Turing complete, right? And we can basically do anything with it, and most of us work on Ethereum here. And like in our game, for instance, we have ERC721 tokens that have a record on the blockchain. So each vehicle has a BZN tank, which is like sort of like your fuel tank, but this is where you put your BZN. And what the creative case we came up with is, instead of giving people ERC20 tokens or selling it to them, we decided to give them the tanks, and they will fill up their tanks with ERC20 tokens. So this is how we combine the two, and I think there are lots of possibilities within the Ethereum network, and it's only your creativity that matters.
I think where there is this uniformity on the kind of underlying blockchain that's being used for each of your game titles, I think it leads us on to talking more about where we've seen the potential of non-fungible tokens in their interoperability, the sort of sovereignty they provide, and also their ability to monetize for the player and for the game platform a great deal of content that was never before seen within the mainstream game. On that note, I mean, that's the potential, but at the moment, what is holding it back? What's preventing us from leveraging it in these kind of ways more extensively?
Well, I think in our case, there's one major limit to the use of the token, which is gas fees and the cost to transfer those tokens, either to mint them to the original blockchain or then to have players transfer between the game and them, or between players and themselves. Typically, that's what drove our decision to move to ERC 1155. Is like if we were using ERC 721, and for example, having a player create 1,000 copies of their own Eiffel Tower, it will cost several hundred of dollars just to create those tokens on the blockchain, which was already like a deal breaker to get them to this approach. So moving to ERC 1155 that really helped to solve that. And yet, ERC 1155 is not standard. It's been over a year and it's been going into discussion, last call, then going back to discussion for approval. So it's overall the slow adoption within our ecosystem that's not even helping on the other side the fast adoption from users.
So transaction fee are a big issue right now, and we're not completely figure out how blockchain will work. Is it going to be most side chains? Which blockchain will win in the end? So we're still in an exploratory mode, I think. So people are building prototypes, we're experiencing, but we didn't touch like the final states. So a lot of things will change. So the standard comes, some other idea come often, and we are now at the stage where we're discovering all this. And I think this year things will start to settle down, and we'll see more and more adopted standard, broadly adopted standards.
Yeah, just like some of you guys mentioned, transaction fees are definitely the issue for some. For some, they're not unless you're really like trading them in high volumes. If you're just purchasing the vehicle or whatever Ethereum blockchain that uses to play the game and don't pay gas fees to actually play the game because the game is not on chain, then the transaction fees are not really that big of an issue right now. The issue that we see is that players can transfer tokens in batches, right? So we have some of our players who bought tons of vehicles and they're like, hey, I wanna, give like 20 cars to my friend to play. Like, how do I do that? And they get a little frustrated when they learn that they have to transfer the token tokens one by one. So there's some, like I think Loom came up with ERC 721X as like the extension for ERC 721, essentially a wrapper for 1178, which is like a multi-token for fungible tokens. So essentially, the standard makes ERC 721s fungible because they have the same token IDs, and you can transfer them in batches, but then they wouldn't be unique. So it'd be a batch of, let's say, 20 cars that are completely identical. That's the only thing that's there, and it's ready to use basically. But this is one of the biggest problems that we see right now.
I think we are starting to see, we have seen a number of digital asset marketplaces that are addressing some of those underlying issues that come from NFT protocols, especially the fact that you're only able to go after one digital asset one at a time. You've now started seeing batch sales from OpenSea, and it kind of gets us into the next topic, which is alternative token protocols, token standards. So on that, we've spoken previously and a little bit briefly about Engine's ERC 1155 standard. But then also we have BitGuild, which has got its ERC 998 standard, which is all about the idea of having a digital avatar, and any of its digital assets are classed attached to it, so you can sell that on as a single asset. And I just wanted to get your opinions on this one. For both of these ones, do these represent a innovative step forward for the approach towards digital assets, or are they more of a sideways step which are more dedicated towards a specific game? Yeah, open platform for this one.
As a wallet provider, it's a bit of a nightmare because as many standards emerge, you have to make them compatible, and there is so many different use cases. So some are probably good, some are adapted for some use, some for other use. But I hope and I think the industry will go toward some standardization where whatever is added new is fully backward compatible, and within one click it works with the other platform. So now the fragmentation brings a little bit of challenge, even though there are some things that come in standard, but I think we need to move really into defining all the use cases and putting what is common to everything within the same package.
Well, I agree with you on this one, even though it's not necessarily mandatory to have support for ERC-1155 in a wallet. For example, us as game developer, we also implement what we call like inventories, where we can display, for example, those NFTs that the player have, and alleviating the support of it from the wallet developer. If not, then it adds to this slow adoption, where indeed they need to support more standards, and they already have a lot on their stake, just about the UI, UX things, the way to store or remember private keys for users, and even like non-support for meta transaction, the scripting message when you sign, etc. So even before attacking our own issues, they have a bunch to do.
I think that's certainly one of the things you have from the NFT marketplaces is just how much integration and how much collaboration is needed between different projects in order to make sure that that sort of ecosystem can run effectively and at a balanced sort of pace. But Vlad, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, in terms of the batch standards, I mean, you mentioned OpenSea, and they're doing a great job at running their marketplace. We're working with them very closely. And even though they do have batch sales, and the bundles was what they're called, and we were selling a lot of them during this holiday season. They were going like hot cupcakes. But there's still, like, you have to pay for each token transfer. You don't see that, but it happens on the back end. So each token, each ERC-721 is transferred individually, and the buyer pays the gas for it. I think it's the buyer is how it works. ERC-998 is an interesting standard when one token can own another token, and like at Warriders we were looking at it because our vehicles can essentially own benzene tokens, for instance, right? So they can fill up the tank, and they actually only own the blockchain. Right now, ERC-20 tokens just get transferred to their wallets, so they work independently. But unless it becomes a standard and it's a finished standard, we're probably not going to be using it. When it is a standard, then we'll go for it. Until then, we're working with what the community has officially accepted. So, but we're looking at it closely.
Okay, and I just wanted to end off with this one last thing. If you could say anything to any aspiring developer, what would they need to do in order to create a highly effective NFT in a game?
I'm actually going to have a talk today, I think at 420, about building, designing smart contracts for games, for the future in-game economy. And I think one of the most important things to look at is the business people should work with developers. And because when you're designing, for instance, a pre-sale contract, or you're designing a sale contract that is going to regulate how much your NFTs are going to cost, and if you're implementing any kind of price increase algorithm or anything like that, you want the contract to be immutable. And immutable means that you can't change that. So if you can't change the contract and you mess it up, you essentially messed up your future economy. But it does have to be immutable because otherwise the market is basically not going to trust you. If you with like a Zeppelin OS on it, which is upgradable contracts, then you can change the terms of the deal at any time, and people are going to be like, okay, well, these guys will change it at some point, and maybe we'll lose our money. So I'll be talking more on this, but I think the most important thing is do your research, do your surveys, make sure you get the pricing right, account for currency volatility, and all sorts of things. So, but if you want to learn more about this, you can come for 20. I'm not sure which room.
Here.
Which one?
In
here? Okay, yeah. Just come here at 420. Thanks.
So one thing that I learned doing blockchain for several years is it's good to take proven standard, proven blockchain. There is two ways. Either you want to innovate and make some crazy stuff and you're not doing this as a business but more as a proof of concept, then jump into new standards, new blockchain, new promising things. But if you want to really build a game that is sustainable, as you mentioned, it's better to look at things that are already proven, because when something new comes out, maybe there is critical bug and then it's super hard to solve afterwards. So it's better to build on solid ground. Blockchain is already new and not that easy, but better be secure in that part.
I think the way you ask the question is mostly business oriented, like a highly effective NFT, not on the technical business. So for game developer, I would say like you have to put yourself into your player's shoes and think like what's the real value behind that NFT. So does it have any utility in the game? Is it scarce just because myself as a game developer I like it to be scarce, or is it scarce because that's a true reasoning behind and that will drive your tokenomics in a logical way, so that you can align the utility and the pricing, and usually that's the right combination for something to be selling well at the right price. So I think there's nothing new here. We've been seeing that in any other product economics. Just
Fair point. Ladies and gentlemen, Sebastian Bourget, Shaban Chamé, and Vlad Kartishov. And thank you so much for being up here and speaking to me about NFTs. Thanks, guys.